I never imagined that the quiet presence of a 17-year-old could remind me what connection feels like. My name is Rachel Monroe. I'm 40 years old, recently divorced, and I moved to Arizona to start over alone. I hired Noah West to help me clean up the yard. He was quiet, hardworking, and seemed to be running from something too. Only meant to hire help, but then one question from Noah made me freeze. Are you truly happy here? When did his daily visits become such a comforting part of my routine? If you've ever been awakened by an unexpected connection, ever wondered how unexpected bonds can help us rediscover ourselves safely, keep watching this story. And tell me, what would you do if you were me? My name is Rachel Monroe, and I'm 42 years old. If someone looked at my life now, they might think, I found peace, a small house in suburban Arizona, sunny mornings, and a backyard filled with cacti and stones. But the truth is far from that. I moved here after a long and exhausting divorce. 14 years of marriage to David, my first and only husband, ended in silence, colder than any argument. He left without blame, leaving me with an empty house and a hollow heart. At this age, I no longer hoped for passionate waves of love. I just wanted peace. I just didn't realize peace could take the shape of such deep loneliness. At first, I tried to create a new routine, brewing coffee at exactly 7 a.m., playing soft jazz on the radio, walking around the backyard, and spending hours cleaning every corner of the house. But the more I cleaned, the more I realized I was trying to erase traces of David. His old slippers still in the shoe cabinet, his coffee mug, the towel he used to hang over the armchair. Each item was a reminder that I no longer belonged to a we, but only to me. A friend from the book club referred me to a young man who could help with house maintenance. He's young, but very mature, knows how to do all sorts of things. I nodded, not expecting much, until Noah West showed up at my door one March morning. Noah was 17, tall, with a serious gaze, and spoke almost nothing beyond what was necessary. He simply nodded hello and got to work as if he already knew exactly what needed to be done. I watched Noah from the kitchen, feeling grateful for the quiet help he provided. He worked like someone who had gone through more than his years should allow. Every movement was steady, unhurried, and never lazy. Before long, Noah's presence quietly became a familiar part of my days. He came every morning, cleaned the garden, fixed the stuck garage door, helped me sort through the cluttered storage room I had ignored for years, and I began to look forward to the gentle knock at the door each morning, the only sound that made the house feel less empty. We didn't talk much. Conversations began with short phrases: do you need the faucet fixed? Or, the bougainvillea's dried up, probably needs new soil. But over time, the silence between two strangers became strangely comforting. I don't know when I let Noah into my private world. Maybe it was when I left a small box of cookies on the table for him to take home, or when I asked about the music he was listening to through his headphones. Or maybe it was the moment I realized that his consistent presence brought a peaceful rhythm to my days I thought had long been asleep inside me. I told myself he's just a kid, but Noah didn't act like one. And my house suddenly didn't feel quite so big anymore. That afternoon, it started to rain, a strange kind of rain in the heart of the Arizona desert. Noah had just finished cleaning out the shed when heavy raindrops began to tap loudly on the rooftop. I opened the kitchen door and called out, Noah, come in, you're getting soaked. He stepped inside, his shirt streaked with raindrops, damp hair falling over his forehead. I handed him a towel, smiling as I said, the sky never gives a warning, does it? Noah gave a faint smile, and for the first time, I saw real softness in his eyes. That day, I'd cooked a bit too much. A pot of pumpkin soup, some garlic butter bread, and a chill glass of lemonade. I invited Noah to stay for dinner. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded, as if he, too, needed a reason not to return to whatever cold, empty house might be waiting for him. We ate in the small kitchen, the rain outside steady and rhythmic, like the background score to a silent film. I asked if he liked the food. He nodded, then said, I've never had this before. My mom didn't cook. It was the first time he used the word kun. Your son in Vietnam's a subtle slip, unconscious. And when I gently asked your mom, Noah didn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the table. She left when I was 10. My dad comes and goes. I don't blame him. He's probably tired. He shrugged as if that were just the way things go, as if a child wasn't worth sticking around for. I fell silent for a few seconds. Something ached quietly inside me, a wordless empathy. He's just a kid, I used to think. But now, I saw a small grown up sitting across from me, carrying a world that had abandoned him. I got up to fetch more bread, trying to find something to dissolve the heaviness in the air. But when I turned around, I saw Noah looking at me with the eyes of someone who needed safety. And I saw the quiet pain of a child trying to be grown too fast. Are you happy living here alone? The question came out unexpectedly, like thunder in the rain. I paused, then slowly sat back down. I don't know, I answered truthfully. Some days I feel peaceful, and some days, like today, I feel emptier than ever. Noah didn't say anything else. He just nodded, as if he understood that feeling better than anyone else ever could. We didn't say much for the rest of the evening, but when Noah stood to leave, I called after him. If you're free tomorrow, come by a bit earlier. I want to replant the cactus row in the back. He smiled and gave a small nod. Yes, I'll be here. I didn't correct the way he called himself. And when Noah stepped out the door, I felt a sense of comfort and gratitude filling my heart in the midst of the strange desert rain. The next morning, the sky was strangely clear. The rain from the night before seemed to have washed away not only the dust on the window frames, but something inside me as well. I brewed coffee early, poured an extra cup, and placed it on the wooden table out on the porch, like a new habit formed after a particularly special evening. Noah arrived right on time, carrying 2 bags of soil and a quiet smile. I think this cactus row needs new soil, he said, his voice steady, like someone used to living with caution and self-reliance. We worked side by side in silence for quite a while. I watched his hands gently fill the planters, water the roots, as if each branch was a small piece meant to hold on to something unnamed. I asked, do you like working outdoors? Noah nodded. When I work, my mind stops racing. I smiled faintly. Same here. The sun climbed higher, casting slanted light through the porch roof, outlining his cheek with golden lines. I watched Noah for a long moment without realizing it. There was something about him that reminded me of myself in my 20s. Restless, lost, always forced to be stronger than my age allowed. And right then I realized something else. I the house started to feel warmer, more lived in, with his quiet company. That afternoon, I invited Noah to stay for lunch, the third time in less than 2 weeks. The hesitation from before was gone. He sat at the table more comfortably, and we talked as though time was no longer a barrier. I used to think I'd never trust anyone enough to stay in one place, Noah said offhandedly as he picked up a bite of salad. But here, it feels different. His words made me pause. Not because they surprised me, but because they touched something I was also struggling to admit. I had accepted Noah's presence into my daily routine with quiet appreciation. I didn't respond right away. I simply continued lunch, though inside I went quiet with a feeling I couldn't quite name. Maybe I was afraid that if I acknowledged it too soon, it would fall apart, like the fragile connections I'd lost in the past, because I believed too quickly, hoped too much. At the end of the day, as Noah was getting ready to leave, I handed him a book. I think you'll like this, I said. He took it, flipping through a few pages. You pay a lot of attention to me, don't you? I smiled softly, not deflecting. I pay attention because you deserve to be seen. My reply softened his gaze. Not the look of a boy touched by kindness, but the expression of someone who, perhaps for the first time, felt truly seen. The door closed behind Noah, and I sat back in my familiar porch chair. Inside me, something shifted toward quiet compassion and understanding, but a quiet bond, unnamed, yet strong enough to soothe the long, empty spaces. Maybe it was a kind of renewal, I thought, a new life rising, not from the outside, but from deep within myself. The following afternoon, I opened the old cardboard box hidden under the stairs. Photographs, a few unsent letters, a thin notebook where David had once written little love notes. I wasn't sure what drew me to it. Perhaps it was the way Noah had looked at me yesterday, making me realize just how long it had been since I truly let anyone step into my memories. I turned over the last family photo we had taken before David left for his long assignment in Alaska. In the picture, I was holding little Jack, smiling brightly beside the man I had once believed to be my only place of peace. The photo had yellowed with age, but I still remember that day vividly. The sun, the light breeze, and how I believed everything would be okay as long as we had each other. But that's not how things turned out. Sometimes I wonder if the emptiness in life doesn't come from what we've lost, but from pretending it never happened. A gentle knock on the door broke the silence. It was Noah. I quickly tucked the photo into the bottom drawer and composed myself before opening the door. Noah stood there, holding a small potted plant. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable yesterday," he said, eyes cast downward. "I just sometimes speak without thinking." I opened the door wider. "It's all right, come in. It's getting windy." We sat in the kitchen together, not speaking for a while. Then I turned to him and asked, as if I had been waiting all afternoon to say it, "Noah, if you'd like, would you want to hear a little about David, my husband?" He blinked, surprised, then nodded. I told him small things: how David always made his coffee twice as strong, how he used to name all the potted plants in the garden, and how Jack inherited his deep, soulful eyes. I didn't cry. My voice simply settled into a low tone, like an old radio humming in a quiet afternoon. Noah listened silently, both hands wrapped around his teacup, and in that moment, I saw in his eyes not just interest, but a kind of understanding far beyond his years. "When I talk about my mom," Noah said softly, "I imagine things like that too. It's just my memories aren't that beautiful." I looked at him, a 17-year-old quietly carrying burdens beyond his age, and I realized that whether memories are happy or sad, they deserve to be told, because that's how people stay with us, not just in the house, but in our hearts. As Noah stood to leave, he paused before opening the door and said, "Miss Rachel, I don't know how long I'll be here, but if it's okay, I'd like to stay. Not just for the work." I didn't answer right away. I just nodded. So lightly, it felt like the wind might carry it away. But I knew he understood. Because in that moment, we had both seen a piece of memory reflected in the other's eyes. And sometimes that's more real than any promise ever spoken. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. In the kitchen, the smell of coffee mingled with the quiet light streaming through the window, creating a gentle kind of peace. But inside me, there was no stillness. Noah's words from the night before kept echoing in my mind. "I want to stay, not just for the work." It wasn't a request. It was an honest way of saying he wanted to be seen, to belong. I understood that feeling more clearly than ever. When Jack was little, I used to silently wish that David would skip a trip, cancel a project. But work always won. Eventually, I stopped hoping. I learned how to do the grocery shopping alone, change light bulbs, hold my child close through every high fever and scraped knee. I knew what it felt like to need someone and be afraid to say it. And now, standing before a young man who wasn't my son, wasn't a friend, and wasn't yet old enough to be a grown man, I chose to offer guidance, support, and a safe space, just as I would for any young person in need. I cleaned out the small room at the back of the house once David's workspace later left unused. I changed the sheets, added a reading lamp, not because Noah needed a place to sleep, but because I needed him to know his presence here matters, and he doesn't have to cross any boundary to be worthy of that. That evening, I told Noah, "If you want to stay, you can. In the old study, you can study, read, even plant a few pots if you like. But the important thing is you don't have to try to earn your place here." Noah looked at me, His eyes briefly uncertain, then softened. He nodded. Thank you, ma'am. I didn't ask for more. I expected nothing else. In my heart, that was enough. We had dinner on the porch, where the newly planted lavender was beginning to bloom a soft purple. Jack called via video from school. Noah greeted him politely, then quietly stepped away to give me some privacy with my son. After the call, I walked into the house and saw Noah sitting in his new room, reading under the warm glow of the lamp, light spilling over his tousled hair. A sense of peace spread through my chest. It wasn't love. It wasn't a replacement. It was simply that I had chosen to be gentle with a soul that had lost its way. And in doing so, I was relearning how to be gentle with myself. No one made promises. But I believe sometimes a quiet act of kindness at the right moment can save someone more than any hurried vow ever could. I didn't know why I started writing that letter. Maybe it was because I couldn't sleep that night. Maybe it was because the conversations between Noah and me had grown deeper but never felt complete. Maybe I just needed to see my thoughts in words rather than through hesitant glances or prolonged silences. I took a sheet of paper from an old drawer, placed my pen down, then hesitated. No, there are things we adults don't say, not because we don't feel them, but because we don't know how to name them. You entered my life quietly but gradually. Your presence gently became part of my daily comfort and routine as well. Not because I needed you to replace someone, but because you made me realize that sometimes a stranger can help us hear ourselves more clearly than those we've known forever. I used to think I'd never let anyone in again, but you didn't come in with promises or demands. You just knocked. Each morning with a quiet kind of kindness. I paused, my hand trembling slightly. I felt a protective warmth, something like mentorship, something grounding. Nor was it anything vague. It was both connection and boundary, both closeness and a warning to myself that I was walking a thin line. And every decision, every silence could tip everything into a fall. I continued writing. There are moments when I feel like I'm reliving my 17-year-old self, yearning to be seen, straining to prove I'm worthy of affection. But I've learned no one should have to pay to stay beside someone else. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to be needed or special to deserve to be here. If you're here, then be here as you are, a person learning to trust and equally deserving of being trusted in return. I folded the letter and placed it inside an old book on the shelf. I didn't give it, didn't send it. I simply kept it as the most honest recording of my heart. One day, if you need it, I'll give it to you. And if not, then it still serves as a reminder to myself that sometimes the kindest thing we can do for someone is not to burden them with emotions they don't yet have names for. That evening, as Noah passed through the living room, I said quietly, "There are things I haven't been able to say, but when you need me, I'm here." He paused, looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Yes, ma'am. We didn't say anything more, but perhaps we both understood. Sometimes even an unsent letter can bring two people closer together. The last light of day streamed through the window blinds, casting a glow over the small kitchen where I was peeling an apple. The Arizona sky had turned a soft shade of orange, like watered down paint, and I heard familiar footsteps behind me. Noah. He paused at the doorway, saying nothing at first. I didn't look up. I simply reached for a small bowl, placing the thinly sliced apple pieces into it. He stayed there, silent. But it wasn't the kind of silence that feels awkward. It was the kind that quietly searched for the right moment, the right way to speak. "Beautiful day," I said softly without turning. "Yes," he replied, then added, "I took the afternoon off." I turned, surprised. "Why?" Noah pulled an old book from his pocket. Not the one where I had hidden the letter, but a novel I'd once told him I loved when I was younger. The Secret Garden. He placed it on the table. "I thought I should learn to read the things you used to love so I could understand you better." And I laughed, gently but sincerely. "Is that how you get to know someone?" "Not always the best way," Noah replied. "But It makes me feel closer without needing to ask too much. I looked at him and for the first time saw a kind of calm in him. No longer the boy who once gripped a hammer tightly, trying to fix the sunshade like a grown man, but a young person learning how to step back and truly listen. I brought out 2 cups of tea to the back porch. We sat side by side, watching the sun slowly dip behind the mountains. Nothing rushed, nothing needing to be defined, just the wind and the quiet rhythm of 2 steady breaths. Noah, I said after a long pause, there are feelings that are hard to name, especially when someone is in the middle of finding themselves again. But he turned to me, just nodded gently. I know, and I think I'm in the middle of that journey too. Turn to him. We're both walking, maybe not in the same direction, but we can still share part of the road. Noah smiled. I don't know what the future holds, but if it's all right, I'd like to stay on this stretch of road a little longer. My heart softened. It felt like his words were quietly reassuring, bringing peace I hadn't expected. I didn't answer right away. I simply reached for the bowl on the small wooden table and handed him a slice of apple. And then for today, I said, let's just sit here, drink tea, talk if we want, or stay silent. That's okay too. And we sat there, beneath the fading light of day, surrounded by the openness of things that didn't need defining. Between a woman learning to love life again and a young man learning to believe he deserves to stay. We didn't need more words, only the light on the porch, gentle and real. Autumn arrived slowly in Arizona, slipping in through the cooler mornings and the afternoons where sunlight no longer blazes. I noticed the changing season not just in the weather, but in the rhythm of life inside my own home. In the way I woke up early without the weight of uncertainty, just a strange kind of peace. And in the way Noah walked into the kitchen, took 2 cups, and poured tea without asking, like he had belonged here for a long time. We never brought up that all evening again. It wasn't necessary. The letter he wrote I kept in the desk drawer, not as proof, but as a quiet reminder of fragility, of honesty, and of boundaries. Noah began taking evening classes at the community college. His schedule was irregular, but I saw the change in his eyes when he returned each night. Brighter, more composed. He talked about books, about professors, about older students who often asked why he chose to study philosophy instead of mechanics. I listened, truly listened, and no longer felt like I was straining to raise anyone. We were now simply 2 people living in sync. One afternoon, while watering the garden, I noticed Noah sitting under the porch, repairing an old wooden bookshelf I had once planned to throw away. I stood there for a moment, watching him work carefully, as if stitching together a fragment of memory. And I thought, maybe healing isn't about replacing what's lost, but about finding gentle peace in unexpected connections. Something gentler, slower, more sincere. That night, as we cleaned up after dinner, Noah turned to me. "Miss Rachel," he said softly. "Thank you for letting me stay." I smiled, still holding the dish towel. "I didn't let you stay, Noah. You chose to. And I'm deeply grateful for that." He lowered his head, but I saw the relief in his eyes. Some acknowledgments don't need to be loud, only timely and genuine. We stepped out to the porch where the early month moon cast shadows over the small potted plants I'd recently planted. Neither of us said anything more, but in that silence, I felt something very clearly. An old chapter had closed, and a new one was beginning. Not with dramatic twists, but through quiet moments like moonlight, like the sound of tea pouring, like a young man sitting beside a grown woman, both of them looking forward. I thought of David, of the years that had passed, of the loneliness that once filled my chest. And then I looked at Noah, not as a replacement, but as a quiet, unexpected, necessary extension of a journey I never thought I'd walk through. A new season had arrived. Not dazzling, not rushed, but real, and as tender as the light spilling across the porch. Life doesn't always give us clear answers. Sometimes the only thing we can do is listen to ourselves, listen to others, and learn to accept that some connections may be imperfect, yet still worthy of being cherished. The story between Rachel and Noah isn't just about two people who happen to cross paths. It's about choice. The choice not to run when things become uncertain, the choice to face old wounds, and the choice to move forward with kindness. If you've ever been through pain, if you've ever felt lost, know that you are not alone. Healing is not a straight line, it's a journey marked by unexpected companions, moments of clarity, and simple things that help restore our faith. Share your thoughts in the comments. Has a seemingly simple relationship ever changed the way you see yourself? We're always listening, and we deeply value every story you choose to share.